This is what everyone gets wrong when it comes to training calisthenics. Poor structure, wrong exercise selection, wrong exercise ordering, intensity issues, the wrong rep ranges, rest times. There are obviously a host of things that people do wrong, but we can fix all of these in just 5 steps. I want to find a way to simplify all of this stuff so you can start implementing it into your training right now to genuinely build strength and genuinely build skill at a faster, more rapid rate, which you should be doing. So strap in. This is going to be an absolute game changer for your training. I absolutely promise. But the very first thing that I think a lot of people get wrong is rep ranges and hold times. So if your goal is to build strength with that exercise, which for majority of them, obviously it's going to be, you want to be working in somewhere in between a 1 and 6 rep range. You know, based on the research, is going to give you the most benefit in terms of strength adaptation. And obviously within calisthenics, we still do a lot of hold. So we want to be working somewhere between a 4 and 10 second hold range with those more hold exercises. So 1 to 6 reps and a 4 to 10 second hold is going to be the most advantageous for strength and obviously building skill as well, because a lot of those skill-based exercises are very strength-focused too. However, there are going to be times where you will want to prioritize building a little bit more muscle, building a little bit more conditioning around those tendons and joints so you can actually handle those harder lifts. So you want to go through periods or maybe toward the end of an exercise, the end of a session, where you focus a little bit more on building muscle and, as I said, building conditioning. And here you want to work somewhere around that 6 and 15 rep. As I said, this is going to help build a lot more muscle and conditioning to get you ready for those strength-based exercises. Secondly, I think so many people get this wrong. What a lot of people tend to do sometimes is they devote one day to each skill. So they might have a planche day, they might have a front lever day, or they'll have a handstand day, and they're spending an hour or whatever it is, 2 hours once a week, all of their volume in one day. So in terms of building strength, it's just not going to be the best way to go about it. You want to spread the volume across a few days to increase the intensity that you can actually train. And that's going to increase the frequency. So you're getting that skill in multiple times a week. And especially for some exercises, if you're already a little bit experienced with it, you're quite conditioned to it, you can start pushing 3, 4, even 5 times a week, depending on how much sets and volume you're doing per session. But you definitely, especially for those key exercises at the start, you want to be hitting them at least twice a week. For exercises that you find less fatiguing, maybe from like some hold exercises like planches, L sits, front levers, as we spoke about, handstands, you can push a lot higher frequency. Just listen to your body and make sure that you are well recovered. And that's one thing we will talk about as well, is finding the balance between how frequently you can train, how intense you can train, but also how much you can recover from. So finding the balance between those two is incredibly important. So listening to your body and knowing when you can kind of retrain the skill and how many sets you're doing is very smart. Thirdly, and this is another thing that everyone gets wrong, and it is rest time. So within rest times, a lot of people tend to push 1 minute, 2 minutes because they want to get the most out of the session. And look, if you're very strapped for time, then obviously you're going to have to cut into that rest times a little bit, but especially for your harder exercises and those first 2 or 3 kind of exercises in your session that are very, very strength focused, skill focused, quite hard for you, you need to be resting as long as you actually can. So at the least 3 minutes is what I recommend. But the more you can push closer to 5, even 8, the research is showing you actually get more out of that, and you can kind of get the most out of each set and push that intensity each time. So rest times is crucial. All I say is rest as much as you practically can. Know obviously your time constraints, and then as you move through the session, obviously you're going to go from the harder lifts to maybe slightly the more easier lifts that are a little bit more hypertrophy and conditioning based, like we spoke about. They can be at a bit of a shorter rest. So the really tough ones, those tough exercises, rest as much as you can. Then you can start getting closer to like 60 seconds and 120 seconds, maybe somewhere in between that range for those easier exercises. So being smart with that, know your time constraints, as practical as you can. But the 4th step that you have to find a balance between, and this is going to be so crucial for your strength, is balancing intensity with perfect form. So you hear a lot about this, especially now in terms of calisthenics kind of industry. People always talk about how it's only attempts, you just need to push the effort so much, it doesn't matter about form. And then you have another camp where they talk about perfect form. Now you need to make sure it's perfect form. You don't want to push close to failure, creates unnecessary fatigue, it's too hard to recover from, all the rest of it. What I highly recommend, and what a lot of the coaches we've done and my mentors, and we've seen the best results with this, is finding the balance between attempts and perfect form. And that way you're really going to actually stimulate as much strength and skill adaptations and push the intensity, but also not cook yourself and actually build the technique and the understanding of an exercise. So you're going to find the balance between those two and how you can do that. And let's say if you do this across one training week, you'll start off with those more attempt lifts. You might do a few sets with those really hard exercises. The form is still good, but you're not doing incorrect movement patterns. You're not doing a planche with bent elbows. Everything is still kind of correct, but it's just not perfect. The scap protraction might not be as good. Front lever, the hips might be a little bit down. Like 80% form is what we kind of say. You're really pushing the intensity, form's not as good. But then as you move toward the end of a session, you get that conditioning in with perfect form. And this is how you find that balance. So you're getting that stimulus in with those harder efforts, and then you're getting a little bit more volume in with a little bit more higher sets, but you're not pushing failure. So you're actually going about that 80% effort. You're stopping once you feel your form start to drop. Do it with imperfect form, and you're not going to yourself with crazy high impact and high intensity efforts all the time. And this is the secret to not getting injured and actually building good form as well. What you could also do as well is spend maybe 4 or 5 weeks focusing on perfect form, where you go through a whole training block, focusing on a little bit better form, a little bit more conditioning, higher volume of sets across a week and building up technique. And then you can do another block of 4 to 5 weeks where you focus a little bit more on lower amount of sets across the week. So lower volume, but higher impact, higher intensity efforts. And that's what we call periodization, where you just spend periods focusing on slightly different focuses for the same skill. So that's something you can think about. And lastly, you're not getting any guidance. I'm not saying you have to invest in me and take on board with a private one-on-one coaching. If you want to do that, by all means, you can jump on board. However, what I do recommend is just getting access to some form of community. If you have like-minded individuals around you who are training calisthenics and you can sponge off each other, get feedback, I think that is absolutely awesome. The thing is, obviously, calisthenics is very niche. I was very fortunate that when I moved to Gold Coast, I found a lot of that. I lacked it in my first couple of years, and I think it really compromised my progress. I was trying to work shit out on my own, had absolutely no idea what I was doing. It was quite shit, to be honest. But if you have access to a community person, highly recommend it. If you don't, I have an online community where you get access to programs. We have community and coaching support. We even do a weekly coaching call with everyone. For $19, I think you'd be silly not to be honest with you. Sus below and jump in, and I really do think you'll benefit if you don't have that face-to-face community. And even if you do, I think you'll definitely benefit from it as well. But either way, I really do hope you can take away some of this knowledge and implement it into your training right now. I promise it will skyrocket your strength. It's just about building strength and optimizing key things in your training programs. Benefit from building more muscle. Simple things, but it does make a bit different. Hope this helps, guys.